Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of On Tap where we are going to be doing a taste test of IPAs. Let's get to the episode. So in this special episode of On Tap, what I'm going to be doing is featuring and then running a taste test of all of the different IPAs that have been featured on the channel thus far over the previous 14 videos of brewery and beer profiles. This is going to feature 8 different beers by 6 different companies. If you'd like to see the videos where I feature each of the individual IPAs alongside other beers made by those particular companies, the links are below. You can check out all of our previous videos where IPAs are featured. Now, I've made no bones about the fact that I'm not exactly the biggest fan of IPAs, though that is a work in progress and I'm trying to expand my horizons. So, why am I reviewing IPAs? Well, the fact of the matter is, in global brewing culture, but especially I would say American beer culture of the past 20 to 25 years, IPAs have become a major component of the sorts of beer people drink. And so it would be very irresponsible of me to feature lots of different American IPAs made by a number of breweries and not talk about IPAs in regards to one another. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do 2 different assessments. If you're not a fan of IPAs, like me, I'm going to be ranking these beers according to what I would most want to drink. So if you're thinking about maybe dipping your toe in the water and trying an IPA at some point, you can use my assessment, knowing that I'm not a huge IPA drinker, to guide your judgment as to what you might want to try. And before the IPA lovers out there light up their torches and grab their pitchforks and come after me, just know that I will also be doing another assessment where I rank order the beers based on my general feeling of maybe kind of how good quality they are, regardless of my personal feelings for them. So with that, let's get to the drinking. So let's taste some IPAs. Up first, we have, all the way from episode 1, the Sam Adams New England IPA. Hazy and juicy. Let's take a little taste. Yeah, so quite hazy too. Yep, you know, it's got that kind of dry hoppy, floral notes to it, coming through quite strongly. Yeah. This one, and I remember this one's pretty good in the scheme of IPAs. It's got a bit of a body to it, a little bit of a bite, but not too much. Some hoppy dryness, but it's not turning my mouth into a desert. There is some sort of slight fruit note to that, kind of a citrus, tangy. I think it was sort of like a mango pineapple kind of flavor that I am getting a little bit of this, and those kind of blend together pretty well. Yeah, bitter but not excessively dry. So I think we're starting this off pretty well actually, and I'll be curious to see how the other ones stack up to this, because in the scheme of my opinions of IPAs, this one I think sets the bar actually reasonably high. So next up, we have the first of 2 IPAs by New Belgium. The first of these is the Voodoo Ranger IPA. Let's see how it compares to the Sam Adams. Yeah, this is a little bit more, I remember it has a little bit more of an orangey color compared to the Sam Adams. Less noticeable aroma on this. I'm not getting very much. I'm just getting a mild sort of piney smell. Not really much in the way of kind of fruity notes. Yeah, so I definitely, for my personal palate, I definitely do not like this as much as the Sam Adams. This one doesn't feel like it has that much flavor to it. And the flavor that it does have, I would, describe as a bit more piney and sort of dry, which is, it is sort of an interesting flavor. It's not quite my style though. And I'm not quite sure, like I'd really want to have much of this. You know, having a taste is fine, but I wouldn't really opt for a whole bottle of this. Next up, we have the other New Belgium IPA, the Voodoo Ranger Juicy Haze. This is going to be hazy, so sort of like not too much of a head on this one. So like the Sam Adams, it's unfiltered and it's going to be a much, sort of thicker color. It's very, very translucent. Yeah, so I like that the flavors are a little softer on this. It really is sort of a juicy, hazy, sweet, kind of smooth IPA. It's not too dry and floral and hoppy in one note. There are a couple things going on there, and it's very nice. It's sort of it's a nice beer to kind of relax with. Let me take another taste. Yeah, I think it's got a lot of the similar notes to the Sam Adams, where it's got some fruit, it's got some body to it. It's actually not very hoppy, but there's a little bit there. But it's smoother and it's a little bit more subtle in all regards. So we've assessed Sam Adams and New Belgium. Next up, we have Lagunitas. And the first Lagunitas beer we tried is the classic Lagunitas IPA, their best-selling beer and the best-selling single IPA brand in the United States of America. Yeah, so this has a sort of orange color, similar I think to the Voodoo Ranger basic, slightly more kind of goldeny orange kind of color. Let's give it a smell. Not too much coming through on this. Pretty mild. Let's give it a taste. Yeah, so I quite like that actually, and I know in the last video when I did the IPA video, I thought this was pretty good too. But I'm enjoying that. I think that's a nice, bright, well-balanced beer, and it's got not like it has malt that I can really taste, but it has a bit of a it's got a bit of depth to it, so I don't feel like I'm just drinking flowers and hops and pine. There's sort of a foundation on which you've got kind of these notes of these more kind of hoppy notes. Continuing on with Lagunitas, we have Maximus. Once again, no relation to the fictional Roman general played by Russell Crowe, as far as I know. So again, same with that sort of orangey color. Yeah, and some sort of subtle floral notes. Also, I am probably just gonna be completely hoisted by my own petard with some of these assessments, because I'm sure in the previous videos where I'm reviewing these IPAs in relation to other beers by a certain company, I might be giving completely different assessments. So yeah, what can I say? All right, this is how I feel drinking these at the moment. I'm hoping to be as close to the mark as possible, but you never know. I'm sure there's gonna be one or two of these beers where if we watch my old footage, we're gonna see that I don't give exactly the same assessment. Yeah, this is what I remember with this. This is, I'm very surprised, yeah, how much I enjoy a lot of the flavors in this beer. It's got some floral, it's got some hops. It's dry, but it's not overly dry. But there's sort of a depth of flavor to this. This beer doesn't feel thin. It doesn't feel kind of watery or with a lack of flavor. My palate feels very much like there are a lot of flavors there, and there's sort of that are a mix of things. I'm not getting too much in the way of really citrus, but definitely the hops and sort of floral notes are coming through on this the most strong. Yeah. I quite like this. It is very dry. Definitely my palate already is pretty dry, but so I'm not sure I would definitely not have more than one of these. And I don't even know about a whole one, but sort of, a half of one, maybe up to a whole bottle would be okay. this is where I'm going to start running into problems with how I assess this, because I'm starting to realize this is now where these paths diverge. I've talked about how I'm going to do the two rankings of how what would I want to drink and take out of the fridge, and how well balanced are the beers. And I think this is a classic example of a beer that the more I'm drinking this, the less I'm realizing, oh yeah, I'd actually want to have a lot of this beer. But I acknowledge it's a very well crafted beer. The more I'm thinking about this, yeah, this is not quite my style. But nonetheless, good IPA. All right, let's keep going. Next up, beer number 6 out of 8, we have the Founders All Day IPA. So yeah, and it does, and indeed with the color, as I said, it does sort of have an almost lager appearance to it, with that sort of light, not quite straw yellow, but sort of one step darker than that. Well, so here's the thing. Because of course I'm biased towards things like lagers, that's going to make me want to rank something like this that tastes like a hoppy lager above many other IPAs. But I will try to give a more accurate assessment of things. In terms of the general flavors on this, it's quite mild. It's more complicated than just the Voodoo Ranger IPA. It's not one note, but it's pretty mild, kind of hops and a bit of malt. I would also say it's probably the most malty of these beers, or I should say it's in some ways kind of the least hoppy, I guess I could say, along with maybe perhaps this one. Yeah, very easy to drink, and I would also say for the non-IPA drinkers out there, aside from maybe this one right here, this is probably the easiest to drink IPA you could find if you don't like IPAs. Let's move on to the final 2 in this IPA taste test assessment. Beer number 7 out of 8 is the Wrought Iron IPA by Bita. And yep, same, it has that orangey color, which does really seem to be very popular, quite uniquely with IPAs. Maybe floral notes, but not much. Yeah, this is what I remember with this. It's the spiciest of all of these. It has this very sort of spicy flavor. That's kind of what I would describe it as. It's really herbal and floral. There's almost nothing in the way of fruit flavors here, or any sense of like malt. It's really dry, spicy, floral, and hoppy. I gotta say, it's not my style in terms of IPAs. It does seem like the kind of beer though where if you were really into these flavors as an IPA drinker, you would quite enjoy this beer. So last but not least, we have the Goose Island IPA. Yeah, and this has more of a golden color. It's got less of that orange color to it. Yeah, not much in the aroma again. You know? In the scheme of an IPA, at least for my taste, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. There's just that kind of hard to place feeling of subtle complexity to the way that this beer has been brewed, where it doesn't just taste like sort of a very hoppy lager that's easy to drink. It's in a similar category to these two beers, where it's kind of this very easy to drink, not very offensive IPA, but it has kind of a good flavor to it. It's gonna be just a well-balanced IPA. All right, so we've definitely established the positioning of these beers, but for these top 3, I want to do a final assessment and just make sure that these are indeed the three that I would most want to drink if you presented me with them. So first, we're going to start with the Sam Adams and the Juicy Hazy. So Sam Adams. Yes, and that is more interesting, than the Goose Island IPA. Yes, in terms of the flavor profile. And now for the Juicy Hazy. Yep. I'm gonna officially assess. I'm gonna break them up, and this is going to be my final ranking. So 8 IPAs, all in rank order from what I enjoy the least to what I enjoy the most. This is the ranking that I would give these beers based on what I would most want to drink, with maybe a tiny hint of trying to think about which beers are crafted with a sense of complexity. Now, as promised, for those of you out there who are much more into the IPA style of beer, I have not forgotten about you, and I will be now ranking these beers according to what I think they could be ranked as based on the complexity of the flavors, depending on what sort of flavors you enjoy. I think in last place, just in terms of what's going on, this is still just not doing it for me. There's not much in this, and it's very, very one note. And after that, though, I would rank the Founders after this. As I said, this is a very easy to drink beer, but if we think about the complexity of IPAs, there's also not that much going on here. And then after that, I would put the basic Lagunitas IPA. We're starting now to get into the category of something that's a very widely appealing, easy to drink IPA, and it's gonna have some of those IPA flavors that if you were an IPA drinker, you'd find probably acceptable. I am totally making this up, but maybe if you're really, really into IPAs, you'd view this the same way that I would view a, a Beck's, as far as like the basic level of lager that like I would be fine to drink if it were handed to me, and I'm not gonna turn my nose up at it and say unacceptable. Then after that, and this is, I'm now starting to get in kind of a zone, sort of a twilight zone of unsure assessments, but what I'm gonna guess in terms of the complexity of beer is that this is probably gonna come next. And like the Lagunitas IPA, the Goose Island IPA is a very popular beer. It's very widely sold. It's pretty easy to find in the main, and it's the kind of thing that you'll often find on tap at a number of bars. Now, after that, and this is I think where it does start to get a little difficult in terms of me assessing these things completely accurately, because the 4 remaining beers that we have, they're very different in flavor profile. This thing is extraordinarily spicy. This thing is very hoppy and floral. This is a very well balanced mix of sort of fruit citrus flavors, tropical fruit citrus flavors and hops. And this is kind of a very nice mix of smooth, juicy, kind of fruit floral, malty, unfiltered goodness. And all of them are very different in their own ways. So if I'm breaking it up by sort of top half and bottom half, assuming you're a big IPA drinker, I think it would look something like this. I'm still just not gonna rank the Wrought Iron higher because it's too spicy. I can't in good conscience, I think, rank this higher than in the top half because there's a lot going on in it, but it's just too spicy. And I think if I were being honest about how a seriously intense IPA drinker might rank these beers, again, you might rank this higher, but I can't. I think it's gonna look something like this in terms of the craft and the complexity of the beers in how they've been produced. So that is my final assessment on the 8 American IPAs featured in this video. Do you think my assessment is correct? Do you want to light up your torch, grab a pitchfork, and march over to my apartment demanding my resignation from this channel. Anything in that range is totally fine, because at the end of the day, this stuff comes down to what do you enjoy drinking and what do you want to kind of try when it comes to IPAs. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode and season 1 in general, why not subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the notification button so when we do come out with season 2, you will be the first to know about our new videos dropping on this channel.